All right, let's talk about the unsung hero of your computer's speed. It's the one thing that really makes everything feel snappy and responsive. We're diving into random access memory, or as pretty much everyone calls it, RAM.
You know that feeling, right? When one computer just flies and another one seems to stumble over every little task? Well, it's not always about the processor. A lot of the time, the secret is all about the quality of its workspace. The better the workspace, well, the faster the work gets done. And that's really the best way to think about it for this whole explainer. Picture random access memory as your computer's digital desk. It's the surface where all the action, all the immediate work is actually happening right now. Okay, so what is it, technically? Well, RAM is what's known as the computer's primary memory. But the two most important words there are temporary storage. This isn't where your files live forever. Nope. It's just a holding area for whatever you're actively working on. Now, this digital desk, it has a few important rules. First, like we said, it's temporary. Anything you leave out on it just, poof, vanishes the second you turn off the power. It's also got a fixed size. There's only so much room on the desk, and its entire job is to hold exactly what the computer's brain, the CPU, needs to see this very second. So, if RAM is the desk where you're doing all your active work, that brings up a pretty obvious question. Where is all your stuff kept when you're not using it? Well, that's where the digital filing cabinet comes in. We call this secondary storage. You know it as your hard drive or your SSD. And this is where you see the huge trade-off, right? Your desk, the RAM, is your temporary workspace. It is unbelievably fast, letting you grab what you need in an instant. But it's pretty small. Your filing cabinet, on the other hand, your storage, is a massive permanent archive. The only catch? Walking over and pulling a file out of it is a much slower process. This constant movement, this act of fetching things from the slow filing cabinet and putting them on the fast desk, actually has a name. It's called swapping. It's this process happening millions of times a second where your computer grabs a program from storage and slaps it onto the RAM so it can get to work. So let's put it all together. Here's how it works, moment to moment. First, all your files are just sitting there, safe and sound in the filing cabinet. When you double-click an app, the computer swaps it. It makes a copy of it and puts it on the desk. And then, and this part is absolutely crucial, the computer's brain can only work with what's on that desk. It runs everything directly from RAM. So why should you care about any of this? Because the size of that desk has a huge direct impact on how fast your computer feels. It's simple. A bigger desk makes everything feel faster. The logic here is pretty straightforward. If you have more memory space, your computer doesn't have to keep going back to that slow filing cabinet over and over again. It can keep more of your apps and files open on the desk at the same time, which just makes the whole system run smoother and faster. I mean, think about it in real life. If you have a tiny little desk, that's less RAM. You can only have maybe one or two projects out at once. If you want to switch tasks, you've got to put one thing away, walk to the cabinet, and pull out another. It's a total bottleneck. But with a huge desk, more RAM, you can have your web browser, your document, your music, everything spread out and ready to go instantly. That's what makes a computer feel fast. And that's why we call RAM the unsung hero. It's not just some random part, it is the high-speed central hub where all the magic happens. It's what unlocks a computer's true potential. At the end of the day, RAM is that essential high-speed bridge. It's what connects that giant, slow library of all your files to the incredible power of your processor. It holds all that in-between data, creating that space for instant access that makes multitasking even possible. Without enough of it, even the fastest processor on the planet would just be sitting there, waiting around. Which leaves us with one last big question. If RAM is so incredibly fast, why don't we just use it for everything? Why do we even have that slow filing cabinet at all? Well, the answer comes down to a delicate balancing act between speed, cost, and the simple fact that RAM forgets everything the moment you kill the power. And that trade-off, well, that's what has shaped the design of every computer for decades.